the news broke that they were putting an organ in, a Fisk tracker, a very, very basic in terms of technology, but very wonderful in terms of musicology and musicianship, if you like, an organ building technique. And it was the most exciting thing. And I think from that point, the genesis of an idea took root in my brain. We must celebrate this. We must do something special. And it seemed like the great opportunity to work with True Concord. And I was delighted when you emailed me beginning of last year, because that was the opportunity we needed to have a springboard and say, yeah, let's make this is what we're going to do. Let's make it happen. And so that's it. So move to the repertoire for a bit. I can remember being very excited and saying, Eric, I want to do Duruflé Requiem. It's going to showcase the organ. Let's do that. What would you like to do with it? And you quite excitedly replied that you wanted to do
the Martin double choir mass.
Yeah, there you go. An amazing piece. I was just saying to you before we started recording that I've never sung this piece, which is crazy. I've always wanted to. And so I've actually, you've graciously allowed that I might be able to sing along in one of the rehearsals, because it would be such a pleasure for me. I'm excited about that. That's going to be great. But what does this piece mean to you, the Frank Martin double choir mass?
Oh, well, I mean, in a way, that's an easy question. In another way, that's a hard question. I've been around this piece for years. I had the good fortune of singing it in my college choir. We won't say how many years ago that was, but it was a while ago. It made an incredible impact on me. And I didn't even know the story of the piece. I learned the story of the piece later, which just brings even more just sort of devastating impact. The music, there is a spirituality to this music. There is a power to this music that, as an undergrad, I think it just overwhelmed me when I had the opportunity to sing it. I just knew I didn't know how to describe it. I didn't know how to tell others about it. You got to hear this piece. It's so cool. And then I learned the story about it, and Martin writing this piece, an endeavor that he described as being one between God and him, one in which he obviously labored on it, but he did so in a very private, intensely personal way. He put it in a drawer. It didn't see the light of day for decades. Why is still inexplicable to me, because this is, in my opinion, one of the great choral masterpieces of the 20th century. It's hard as nails. It is a tour de force for a cappella choirs. For one choir to take it on, a choir of our size, 24, 32 voices, is immensely challenging. The fact that we've got two really excellent choirs coming together for this project, it just seemed to me right away when you asked me what else we should do, we had to do this because we've got two great choirs. It's written for two choirs, so it is a mass. It is a mass as you expect it in terms of all of the text, the traditional liturgical texts, but it is written for two choirs, which is unusual. That hasn't been done many times. Ralph Vaughan Williams, of course, wrote his G minor mass, double choir mass. That sounds like maybe another project we can do down the road, Chris.
That's a great idea.
But this piece, it has spoken to me a great deal. I did have the opportunity to perform it with the University of Arizona choir. We brought the UA Arizona choir and True Concord. Back then we were known as Tucson Chamber Artists before we changed our name. And we did it. It was an excellent project. It was a little different than how we're doing our project, Chris. I conducted the Martin Mass one night, and my mentor, Bruce Chamberlain from the U of A, conducted the other night, which is one way of doing it. I like how we're going to do it because one conductor, one interpretation of
Mm.
this piece, and then with you conducting the Duruflé and the Foray, our singers, the True Concord singers, get to experience your full interpretation of those pieces. So I think this is just an excellent pairing of compositions.
Well, thank you. And I think what struck me with how you described the piece and got me so excited was the way that it comes across in Martin's own voice as being a supreme act of devotion. It was an intimate compositional process between him and God. And in so many ways, with so many composers across the years, that has produced amazing results. I mean, I'm thinking in the 20th century again about Herbert House's Requiem, which was written as an act of devotion for his son Michael on his sad passing in an accident. And that work was never performed during House's lifetime either, and it was his widow who allowed it to be performed after his death. And we don't know if it's fully complete or realized in the way that House wanted it to, but it comes across so well. Yes. And that would be a good pairing for the Martin as well. We're not doing that, as you said, we're doing the Duruflé, partly because along with the Martin, it stands supreme amongst the works of the 20th century for choral musicians, but it has the added element of being worked for organ by one of the finest organ composers of the era, in my view, of all time. And this is a piece which has long captured my imagination. In fact, from when I was a child, when I was a very unsuccessful organ student, but I was enthusiastic for a few years, and my organ teacher was a man called Roger Sayer, who he's famous now for having worked with Hans Zimmer on the Interstellar soundtrack, and he's a very well-known international recital organist, and he was a wonderful teacher and mentor, and he was a huge fan of French organ music, and he realized it brilliantly. And from studying with Marie-Claire Alain and working with Naji Hakim in Paris and all these incredible descendants of that school, he had almost a direct lineage to Maurice Duruflé, who was born in the late 19th century. So after composers such as Gabriel Fauré, whose Requiem he emulates slightly in terms of form, if not style.
Yes.
And Duruflé was a boy chorister at Rouen Cathedral, famous as the city where Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. He then went to study in Paris with Charles Tournemire, who was an incredible improvising organist, and most of his improvisations were based on Gregorian chant. And it was through Tournemire and also through the way that the French monasteries in the 19th century really revived the art of plain chant singing, and they contributed hugely to the liber usualis, the ordinary form of chant singing, which was used in the daily offices. And through this total immersion in cathedral life as a boy and in Parisian organist life, both with Tournemire, but also with Louis Vienne, another incredible organist and composer at Notre Dame, whose assistant Duruflé became, he developed this incredible love of plain chant and modal harmonic counterpoint writing. And that is what the Requiem is all about. It's not a big bombastic Requiem like Verdi's or Mozart's, or even Brahms's to an extent. It's much more intimate. It's much more supplicant in the way that it aims to provide a conduit between the musicians, the congregation, and heaven. And he almost intercedes for us, I think, as humans through the music and through the way that the lines work. And I've always loved modal writing. I love folk song for the same reason, but in sacred writing, I think modality is, and what we mean by that is the 7 modes of the scales, which if you're just for those listeners or watchers out there, if you're looking at a white note scale on C major, if you start and play the scale up, beginning on a C and then on a D, then on an E, and you just take it to its counterpoint an octave above, you'll go through the 7 modes. And Duruflé uses 2 or 3 modes and introduces different notes to indicate when we're shifting from one to the other. And in conjunction with his use of plain chant melodies, both in the organ and in the choir, we get this incredibly ethereal, impressionist feel, which was very, very fashionable at the time anyway. It was the 1940s and 50s he was writing. Originally as an organ piece on Gregorian chants, and then it became this Requiem. and it's just captivating. And I think it's one of the most beloved pieces of these organ and choir forces. I know he wrote it for orchestra originally. Unlike the foray, which I think works better with orchestra, the Duruflé, I think for me works better with just the organ alone. People disagree, but that's always been my feel. And so the chance to put these two pieces together with these incredible 48 singers. We're bringing in Jeremy Filsall from New York City, who's director of music organist at St. Thomas Fifth Avenue, incredible, globally renowned recyclist, organist, and choir trainer and musician. And I'm excited to work with Jeremy. And we've got PBS recording it. And also we're being joined by the Camelback Bible Church Choir for a massed encore of Gabriel Fauré's Cantique de Jean Racine. So the number of ways in which this project is feeding and giving to us, it just it increases innumerably. There are so many elements to this: the collaboration, the learning, the devotion, the excitement, the promise of choral excellence in the Southwest, in the desert, but a hotbed of amazing artistic activity. It's going to be a project second to none for the area, really. And I'm really excited about that. And what would you say to people who are considering coming, or people who've already got tickets? What's the pitch from Eric for this project? Why should they come and join us in Phoenix and in Tucson?
Well, you've said so much, Chris, already, and really, really great stuff. This is a special program just by virtue of the fact that these two organizations are coming together. It highlights, as you suggested, that Arizona truly is a hotbed for choral music, great art and culture. We think of our professional sports teams and our collegiate sports teams as being the indelible aspects of the state, but truly our culture, our arts and culture, are just so amazing here. And the fact that this is this kind of, I almost think of this as like a summit, if you will, of these two groups who exemplify, if I may say, excellence in our art form in this country and beyond. And the fact that we're coming together, I think, in and of itself, it makes this an event that's not to be missed. But then there's the music that we're doing. And, sometimes folks may struggle with or find esoteric, a mass or a requiem. Or a requiem sounds so depressing. It's this requiem, and you compared it rightly to the Fauré requiem. And there's a reason why these works are popular, and they're popular and for reasons that are similar, but also different from, say, the Verdi requiem, which you mentioned, and the Mozart requiem. We all know those works. In the Verdi and the Mozart, there's the bombast of the tuba mirum and the dies irae, and there's this, God's wrath and judgment. Fauré and Duruflé, they dispensed with those for the most part. There's references to it, but these composers, and Duruflé especially, through the modality, through the employment of the chant, and through the luscious harmonies, they're painting a very different picture of serenity and peace, of love, that stands, I think, in contrast to way too many things we're getting bombarded with in today's culture, particularly in this this political season. And there's just too many negatives that we're especially in Arizona, being a crucial swing state where we can't turn on the TV, right, without seeing all kinds of political ads. This music is transcendent. It takes all of us to a different place, a place of beauty and harmony and peace and serenity. And of all of the requiem settings, I think Duruflé does that the best. And then you've got the Martin with its deeply spiritual, poignant, but just plaintive and beautiful writing. I think attendees can expect an experience that will be uplifting, that will be joy-filled. They will leave feeling good about humanity and arts and culture, and especially in Arizona here, be proud of what we have in our cities and in our state, and just share this. They'll be able to walk away and share this beauty and this joy and this awe and this serenity with those with whom they live and work, and share this beautiful place in which we live.
I agree. I think there is so much white noise in our lives through the immediacy of communication devices, whether it's email or phone or on-demand television. And of course, these things are wonderful. And, you know, they're some of the riches of everyday life if we don't let them control us. But the news is troubling in many ways. You know, you have politics in America, we have politics in Europe, there's politics in the Middle East and the Far East. Everywhere
Yep.
you look, there's politics. And the Duruflé doesn't impose itself on us. It's
Yeah.
almost like an arc which
Yeah.
the very first measure emerges from silence and the very last measure recedes into silence. And it just sort of allows an osmosis into
Yeah.
our lives for 25 minutes and hopefully leaves us feeling quite restored and positive
Yeah.
and I'm a huge lover of medieval Renaissance music and Gregorian chant and modality, as I said earlier. And I think the wonderful thing about it is it allows the rhetoric, the meaning of the words, and the communication of the text really to come to the fore, because the monks who originated that monodic style of single line singing, they were led 100% by the text. The whole point of the music was to elevate that text for the glory of God within the acoustics of those incredible medieval Gothic and Renaissance structures within which they were sung. And Duruflé takes that and he doesn't get in the way of it.
Right.
He embellishes it, but in an incredibly sensitive manner. And this is a composer who he composed 10, 20, maybe even 100 times the music that we actually have of his. He was such a stickler for perfection that we only have the tip of the iceberg of what the music he probably wrote. There's probably so much more that he burned or threw away or rejected. And we're lucky to have this because it encapsulates what could have been for the rest of his musical output. And I think for us as listeners, it encapsulates what could be for our lives. It encapsulates, you know, any sort of troubles and stress and worries we may have. This music produces a beautiful, almost perfect antidote. And alongside the devotion of the Martin Mass, which you described so beautifully earlier, I think it's a very well balanced program. I think we're going to bring a huge amount of heart and conviction to our performance of it. And I'm delighted we're doing it. It's such an honor to work with you, Eric, and with the organization. And
Likewise.
our performance in Phoenix is going to be on the 3 o'clock on Sunday the 13th. Sunday the 13th.
Right.
That's right. And the Tucson performances, if you could remind people, they're going to be on.
So our first performance is Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. at Catalina United Methodist Church. And then Saturday evening, 7 p.m. at Catalina United Methodist Church. Catalina United Methodist, one of the special spaces that we have here acoustically in Tucson, and a terrific organ as well there. And we encourage everybody to come out. And for those who are observing Yom Kippur, there is that space between the performances that we have deemed off limits and sacred. And so you can come to an afternoon concert on Friday or the evening concert and on Saturday and observe Yom Kippur in between.
Absolutely. And that's very important to us that we help to observe that holy day. I mean, the thing about the Mass and the Requiem is that they are for everybody. They're for anybody, no matter what faith or belief. They're a way of communing with, you know, even though they're Christian works originally, I think they would help anybody commune with whatever higher power it is that we seek comfort from in relation to our everyday lives. And we hope that the essentially humanist sound of voices helps to transport anybody and everybody to wherever they need to go. So we do hope to see as many of you there as possible. So Friday the 11th, Saturday the 12th in Tucson, and then Sunday the 13th at Camelback in Phoenix. Eric, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. It's lovely to hear your wisdom about the repertoire. It's lovely to hear more about True Concord's foundation and the progress you've made over the years to be one of the preeminent ensembles in the whole of North America, without a shadow of a doubt. And I will see you in a few weeks, and I'm tremendously excited about the whole project. So great to speak to you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Chris, and I echo your sentiments. Thank you for your high compliments. It is truly an honor to partner with you and your organization.